My HOA Karen made one tiny mistake when she decided to destroy my life over a parking spot. She picked a fight with someone who investigates criminals for a living. So there I was at 6 a.m., steam rising from my coffee mug on my patrol car hood, getting ready for another day, keeping our county safe. The morning air carried that crisp scent of fresh dew on asphalt, and I could hear sprinklers hitting concrete driveways up and down the street. Then this woman storms across the street, designer clogs crunching on gravel, screaming about my illegal parking violation. That eyesore doesn't belong in a family neighborhood, she shrieked, pointing at my county sheriff's vehicle like toxic waste. Little did Brenda Worthington know she just called the cops. On the cops. What would you do if your HOA tried to tow your work vehicle from your own property? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I bet you have HOA horror stories that'll make this look tame. Let me paint you a picture of how I ended up in this suburban nightmare. My name is Marcus Hendrick X, and 6 months ago I was just another deputy sheriff trying to rebuild my life after losing my wife to cancer. The medical bills had eaten through our savings like a wood chipper. So when I got promoted to county sheriff, I had to trade our dream house for something that wouldn't bankrupt me. Enter Willowbrook Estates. 47 identical beige boxes where every lawn smells like chemical fertilizer and dreams go to die. The HOA brochure promised community standards and property value protection. What they forgot to mention was their resident psychopath who treated those rules like the 10 Commandments. Meet Brenda Worthington. Think soccer mom meets prison warden with a clipboard where her soul should be. This woman ironed her jeans and color-coordinated her garden tools. She'd moved here after a messy divorce, bitter about what she called her lifestyle downgrade from some McMansion suburb. Her official title was Compliance Coordinator, which basically meant she got paid to terrorize neighbors into submission. The woman could spot a grass blade growing half an inch too tall from 3 houses away. For 6 months, I'd been parking my patrol car in my driveway like any normal person parks their work vehicle. It's standard protocol, community visibility, rapid response, all that good stuff. Crime had dropped 15% since I moved in. Most neighbors loved having a sheriff around, but Brenda looked at my patrol car like it was a meth lab on wheels. That first morning, I figured she just didn't understand. So, I explained politely about security protocols, community safety benefits, even showed her the county policy requiring take-home vehicles. "I don't care about your little policies," she replied, voice dripping with enough fake sweetness to poison a diabetic. "This is a family neighborhood with property values to maintain. That commercial is eyesore, violates HOA Covenant Section 4. 2.1. She said commercial eyesore like I was parking a sewage truck in a playground. "Ma'am, this actually helps property values. I tried reasoning. Insurance discounts, crime deterrent." "Are you threatening me?" she interrupted, whipping out her phone like she was documenting war crimes. "Because that sounds like intimidation from someone who thinks his little badge makes him special." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about parking, this was about power. Brenda was a small-time dictator who needed peasants to rule, and the new guy looked like easy prey. What she didn't realize was that I'd spent 15 years studying bullies, and they all follow the same playbook. They test boundaries, escalate systematically, and always pick targets they think won't fight back. The toxic cloud of her aggressive perfume lingered in my driveway long after she'd click-clacked back to her house. My twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, watched from the window with worried 12-year-old faces. "Is that mean lady going to make us move again, Daddy?" Sophie asked that night. "No, sweetheart," I said, tucking her in. "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, but we work them out." Famous last words. 3 days later, I found the certified letter in my mailbox. Formal complaint, 72-hour deadline, copied to my department chief. Brenda had just declared war on the wrong sheriff, but here's what made me smile as I read that threatening letter. I just been promoted to a position with access to public records, financial databases, and investigative resources that most people can only dream of. And something about Brenda Worthington's aggressive tactics was setting off every alarm bell in my cop brain. You know that feeling when you pull someone over for speeding and they're way too nervous? That was Brenda. She was hiding something big. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Thick legal paper that crackled between my fingers, official HOA letterhead, and Brenda's signature looking like she'd practiced it in a mirror. The smell of fresh ink told me she'd probably sprinted to the post office the second her printer finished. Notice of covenant violation screamed in bold letters that could wake the dead. According to Brenda's masterpiece, I was violating HOA Covenant Section 4 2.1 regarding commercial vehicle restrictions. 72 hours to remedy this violation or face escalating enforcement action. The beautiful part, she'd copied my department chief, probably hoping to get me fired. Big mistake, Brenda. I spent lunch break doing what sheriffs do, research. Turns out I'd never read the full HOA documents when I bought the house. Most people don't, which is exactly what vultures like Brenda count on. But buried in Appendix C, I remembered reading about emergency services exemptions during my academy training years ago. Sure enough, there it was. Emergency services vehicle exempt. See on, clear as daylight. My response letter was poetry, professional, courteous, and legally bulletproof. I cited County Ordinance 2019-45, referenced State Statute 720.3051, protecting first responders, and politely suggested Miss Worthington familiarize herself with complete documentation before playing lawyer again. I'd learned that trick from watching too many courtroom dramas with my late wife. Always get your legal challenges in writing, because HOAs have to follow state law whether they like it or not. Thought that would end it. Wrong. Within 48 hours, Brenda launched suburban warfare door-to-door like Paul Revere warning about British invasion. Except she was warning about my dangerous precedent of parking legally in my own driveway. Her pitch was masterful property values dropping. Safety concerns about weapons and cars, the classic think of the children manipulation that makes reasonable people lose their minds. By Friday, 8 signatures on her petition, 8 out of 47 households, but she presented it like unanimous neighborhood revolt. The petition demanded I immediately cease parking commercial law enforcement vehicles and respect community standards maintaining our property values. Here's where my cop brain kicked in. While Brenda played politics, I investigated. Quick records check revealed this wasn't her first victim. Past year alone, Maria Santos cited for her landscaper truck. Harold Klein threatened over his RV. Jennifer Reyes harassed about her 15-yay. Our old Honda. Pattern recognition, beautiful thing. This wasn't about vehicles. This was about power control and something that smelled fishier than week-old salmon. The breakthrough came during coffee with Jennifer Reyes, the nurse who worked double shifts keeping our county healthy. She'd invited me over after witnessing Brenda's petition circus, and her relief was palpable. Thank God someone's finally standing up to her, Jennifer said, steam rising from her mug mixing with the scent of cinnamon. She cited me last month for my kids' chalk art on the sidewalk. Chalk, Marcus called it unsightly temporary decorations. Then came the stories. Mr. Kowalski threatened over garden gnomes. Inappropriate lawn ornaments Mrs. Patterson cited for Christmas lights hung 2 days after Thanksgiving. Apparently, some buried seasonal decoration timeline nobody knew existed. Every target had something in common, different, lower income, or unable to fight back. The landscaper was Latino. The veteran lived on fixed income. The nurse was a single mom. Now, the sheriff was getting similar treatment, but Brenda had picked the wrong sheriff to mess with. That night, sipping bourbon on my back porch while the girls did homework, I pulled county property records on my laptop. Something about Worthington and Associates Property Management had been nagging me since day one. 15 years of investigations taught me that when someone's this aggressive about enforcement, money's usually involved. What I found made me actually laugh out loud. First time all week. Brenda's maiden name, Worthington, the property management company handling our HOA enforcement. Worthington and Associates Incorporated 3 years ago with one owner. Our dear compliance coordinator was literally billing the neighborhood for harassing her own neighbors. Every violation letter, every compliance monitoring fee, every minute spent measuring grass height, she was getting paid for all of it. The woman had turned being a professional into an actual business model. I closed my laptop and smiled at the stars. Tomorrow I'd start building a case that would make Brenda Worthington wish she'd never heard of parking enforcement. Because while she'd been playing neighborhood dictator, she'd forgotten one crucial detail. Sheriffs don't just enforce laws, we investigate the people who break them. Brenda's next move proved she had the strategic thinking of a kamikaze pilot. Old, dramatic, and ultimately self-destructive. Wednesday morning, I'm watching Emma and Sophie catch the school bus when this official sedan creeps into my driveway like a hearse at a funeral. Out steps Jerry Hutchkins from City Code Enforcement, looking about as comfortable as a vegetarian at a barbecue convention. "Morning, Sheriff," Jerry mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Got a complaint about illegal commercial activity at this address. Someone claims you're running an unlicensed security business." I actually snorted coffee through my nose. "Company commercial activity? Jerry, you realize I'm the county sheriff, right? This is my assigned patrol vehicle, not some side hustle." "Yeah, that's what I figured." He sighed, the sound mixing with morning sprinklers and my slowly dying faith in humanity. "But this formal complaint specifically mentions unauthorized private security operations and weapons storage violations. I got to check the boxes, 20 minutes later, Jerry was shaking his head and climbing back into his car. No violation found. Case officially closed, but not before every neighbor heading to work got a front row seat to Code Enforcement Theater starring yours truly. Brenda had timed it perfectly. Maximum embarrassment during morning rush hour. "Hey, Sheriff," Jerry called through his window, voice dropping to a whisper. "Lady who filed this? She's made 6 false reports this year. Woman's got issues. 6 false reports." Suddenly, Brenda's aggressive tactics made perfect sense. She was a professional complainer who turned harassment into an art form. That afternoon, my chief summoned me to his office, and I could smell the political pressure before I even sat down. County Commissioner Webb had received yet another complaint about my abuse of power and intimidation of concerned citizens. "Marcus, we both know this is bullshit," Chief Morrison said, his chair squeaking like a rusty gate. "But Webb's got election year nerves. She wants this resolved diplomatically before it hits social media." "Chief, I'm literal. Following department protocol. I know the protocol, but maybe consider parking at the station. Drive your personal car home until this circus ends." That's when Brenda's genius became clear. She wasn't trying to win legally. She was weaponizing bureaucracy to force surrender. Classic playground bully strategy. If you can't beat them fair, make their life miserable until they quit. Unfortunately for Brenda, she just made this personal. A sheriff who caves to HOA terrorists isn't a sheriff anyone respects. That evening, Jennifer Reyes appeared at my door, carrying a casserole that smelled like angels had been cooking and wearing an expression that could cut glass. "Emergency neighborhood meeting," she announced. "My kitchen ate. Time to stop pretending this is normal." 7 neighbors showed up. Practically a suburban revolution. The Kowalskis, Jennifer, the Pattersons, Maria Santos, even Dr. Kim, who usually avoided human contact like it was contagious. "She's systematically destroying all of us," Maria said, exhaustion dripping from every word. "Last week, she measured my fence with an actual ruler. 2 in 2 tall, apparently. Garden gnome Gestapo," Mr. Kowalski added with bitter humor. 37 years collecting those little guys. Now they're aesthetic violations threatening property values. The stories flowed like confession at Sunday service. Brenda had weaponized every HOA rule imaginable. Pool furniture improperly positioned. mailbox numbers wrong font, holiday decorations excessive, and garish. Each violation came with helpful suggestions about preferred contractors who could fix the problems. My cop brain started connecting dots. Wait, she's recommending specific contractors for every violation? Gets better, Dr. Kim said quietly. I researched the landscaping company she recommended for my overgrown bushes. Worthington Landscape Solutions. Same owner as our property management company. The room went dead silent except for the hum of Jennifer's refrigerator. Holy Brenda wasn't just getting paid to find problems, she was getting paid to solve them too. Create the violation, recommend the solution, collect fees on both ends. It was beautiful in its simplicity and absolutely criminal in its execution. I remembered something from a financial crime seminar I'd attended last year. When someone systematically creates problems to sell solutions, that's not harassment anymore. That's organized fraud, possibly racketeering if the pattern's broad enough. Here's what happens next, I said, feeling that electric tingle when a case cracks wide open. Everyone documents everything. Every violation notice, every contractor recommendation, every interaction. We're building a federal case here. Because while Brenda thought she was playing neighborhood politics, she'd actually been running a criminal enterprise right under a sheriff's nose. False police reports, mail fraud, contractor kickbacks, conflict of interest violations. The woman had committed enough felonies to earn her own wing at county lockup. As neighbors filed out, Jennifer grabbed my arm. "Thank you for fighting this. Trust me," I said, staring at Brenda's perfectly manicured house. "The fight's just beginning." Friday morning brought Brenda's nuclear option, delivered with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. Emergency HOA board meeting. The notice practically glowed from every mailbox. Fluorescent yellow paper that could guide aircraft to safety. 48 hours notice scheduled for Tuesday at 2 p.m. when normal people work for a living. The agenda was masterfully vague. Immediate action required regarding ongoing covenant violations and community safety concerns. Translation: Brenda's personal firing squad was locked and loaded. The timing was surgical precision. Tuesday afternoon meant most neighbors would be earning paychecks while retirees and Brenda's hand-picked minions decided my fate. I'd seen this playbook in domestic violence cases. Isolate the target, control the environment, then strike when they can't fight back. Unfortunately for Brenda, she'd forgotten that sheriffs don't punch time clocks. Monday night I channeled my inner spy and conducted reconnaissance. A casual drive past Dr. Pete Dunn's McMansion revealed a war council in session. Multiple cars in the driveway, living room lights blazing, and Brenda visible through the window, gesticulating like she was conducting an orchestra of destruction. The expensive scotch and desperation were probably thick enough Tober Burr bottle. Tuesday arrived with humidity that could drown a fish. The community center felt like a funeral parlor. Industrial carpet reeking of pine saw, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps, and folding chairs arranged in an execution formation. 12 people showed up. 12 out of 47 homeowners, half of them board members or their personal cheerleaders. Brenda had orchestrated this kangaroo court with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Her PowerPoint presentation belonged in a museum of propaganda. Slides screaming about plummeting property values, fabricated statistics claiming 15% drops due to my military-style vehicle presence, and photos of my patrol car shot from angles that made it look like a tank parked at a daycare. "Think of our precious children," she wailed, voice dripping with maternal concern that could have cured drought. "We have weapons and surveillance equipment in our peaceful family neighborhood. What kind of message does that send to potential buyers?" The woman could have convinced vegetarians to buy steakers. When my turn came, I kept it professional. Calm demeanor, factual presentation, legal citations that would survive appellate review. I reminded everyone about state exemptions, federal protections for first responders, and the measurable crime reduction they'd enjoyed since I arrived. 0 break-ins in 6 months, I said, letting that marinate. Zero vandalism, zero drug activity, zero domestic violence calls. Pure coincidence, I'm sure, but Democrat bar. Cy runs on numbers, and Brenda owned the math. 3-2-2 vote implementing daily fines of $500 for continued willful violation of community standards. Kowalski's voted against, like decent humans. Piton and the Ashfords voted with their puppet master. And the fifth board member mysteriously developed a family emergency. $500 daily, $15,000 monthly, more than most people's rent. The fine notice arrived via personal delivery that evening. Brenda on my doorstep wearing a smile that could have powered Las Vegas. Effective immediately, she chirped, radiating the joy of someone who just ruined Christmas. 30 days to comply or we lien your property. That's when her true strategy crystallized. This wasn't about parking compliance. This was financial warfare designed to force me out of the neighborhood entirely, make the cost so crushing that selling becomes the only option. But while Brenda was celebrating her Pyrrhic victory, I was already building her downfall. That afternoon, I'd begun the most satisfying investigation of my career, not as a harassment victim, but as a law enforcement officer who discovered a criminal enterprise hiding behind clipboard tyranny. 3 years of HOA financial records painted a masterpiece of fraud. $23,000 in administrative fees flowing to Worthington and Associates. Invoices inflated for enhanced compliance monitoring. Payment spikes perfectly synchronized with violation campaigns. The beauty was breathtaking. Manufacture problems. Bill for enforcement. Collect fees for solutions. Brenda had weaponized neighborhood disputes into a personal ATM machine. Here's what made me smile while reading those documents. I'd already contacted the State Attorney General's fraud unit, a very enthusiastic prosecutor who specialized in municipal corruption, was currently reviewing my preliminary evidence package. That night, tucking my girls into bed, Sophie's question nearly broke me. "Daddy, is that mean lady going to make us homeless?" "Never, baby girl," I whispered, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent while plotting Brenda's professional destruction. Sometimes bullies think they've won, but they forget that some people know how to fight back properly. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of Brenda Worthington's very bad week, because while she'd been playing neighborhood dictator, she'd been committing federal crimes right under a sheriff's nose. Dan Gadone midpoint reveal 8.510 decimeters man discovery tot legal revelation man DMU. The dramatic tension, can them emotional impact VA sensory details. Some discoveries hit you like a freight train at midnight. Others sneak up until suddenly you're holding a smoking gun that's still warm. This was the freight train kind. It was 11 p.m. Thursday, daughters sleeping, house silent, except for my laptop's hum and the rhythmic tick of the wall clock that sounded like a countdown to justice. I'd been drowning in county records for 3 hours, chasing a paper trail that kept getting more twisted when I led across the document that changed everything. Willowbrook Development Corporation bankruptcy filing, March 2019. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but suddenly I was wide awake. Buried in page 47 of legal gibberish was the clause that made my cop brain explode. Automatic HOA transfer provision. When developers go bankrupt, legal control transfers to homeowners within 90 days, mandatory notification, formal elections, the whole democratic process. Except none of that ever happened. The court documents told a story that would make prosecutors weep with joy. Worthington and Associates had simply continued operating. No transfer notifications, no homeowner elections, no legal authority whatsoever. For over 2 years, every violation notice, every fine, every threatening letter had been issued by a private company, with less legal standing than a food truck. We'd been paying protection money to suburban gangsters. I actually started laughing, not the bitter kind, but pure predatory joy. The sound echoed through my empty kitchen, mixing with the distant hum of refrigerator motors and my slowly accelerating heartbeat. Brenda's entire dictatorship was built on authority that existed only in her delusional mind. The beautiful irony, her lawsuit against me had created a federal paper trail documenting her fraudulent claims. Every court filing where she claimed HOA authority was now evidence of wire fraud, mail fraud, and organized criminal enterprise. The woman had gift wrapped her ow. End prosecution. I pulled up the financial records with fresh eyes, seeing them through a prosecutor's lens. $127,000 stolen from 47 families over 2 years. Management fees, violation fines, special assessments, every penny collected illegally. This wasn't neighborhood harassment anymore. This was systematic financial crime that would make federal investigators cancel their vacation plans. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. Emergency. Brenda called meeting for tomorrow. She's planning something nuclear. Multiple contractor trucks at her house all day. Perfect timing, Brenda. While she plotted her next harassment campaign, she had no idea I was about to drop the legal equivalent of a nuclear bomb on her entire operation. The irony was exquisite. She thought she was dealing some powerless homeowner who'd eventually crack under financial pressure. She had no clue she'd been committing federal felonies in front of a sheriff with direct access to the FBI, state attorney general, and enough prosecutorial contacts to end her criminal career permanently. I spent the next hour building the evidence package that would become Exhibit A in United States versus Worthington. Screenshots, financial records, victim impact statements from 47 families systematically defrauded by someone who'd weaponized suburban politics into organized crime. That's when the moral weight hit me. This wasn't about parking disputes or HOA politics anymore. Elderly neighbors on fixed incomes, single mothers, stretching every dollar, young families building their American dream, all of them robbed by a sociopath with a clipboard and delusions of authority. Time to end this. State Attorney General Fraud Division. This is Sheriff Marcus Hendricks reporting a multi-year organized crime scheme. HOA fraud, approximately $300,000 in illegal collections, 47 victims. We're very interested, Sheriff. By the time I hung up, Brenda Worthington had exactly 2 weeks of freedom left. She just didn't know it yet. War requires strategy, and I was about to orchestrate the most beautiful legal destruction of my career. Friday morning found me in Jennifer Reyes's dining room, which looked like mission control for Operation Destroy Brenda. Documents covered every surface like evidence confetti. 3 laptops hummed like electronic bees, and the smell of Jennifer's rocket fuel coffee mixed with fresh printer ink and the sweet scent of impending justice. Holy shit, Rebecca Wren whispered, adjusting her glasses while reviewing the bankruptcy documents. Rebecca was the kind of attorney who made corporate criminals wake up screaming, razor-sharp, ruthless, and currently staring at what she called prosecution porn. Our war counsel was perfect. Rebecca for legal annihilation, the Kowalskis for historical dirt digging, Maria Santos for community organizing, and Dr. Kim because his forensic accounting skills could make numbers sing opera confessions. "Let me savor this," Rebecca said, her voice carrying the Joe. Why of a shark smelling blood. For 2 years, this woman has been running a criminal enterprise while pretending to enforce HOA rules. "It gets more delicious," I replied, sliding evidence across the table like dealing cards in the world's most satisfying poker game. Every violation notice, every fine, every contractor recommendation, all documented in her own handwriting. Dr. Kim looked up from his laptop spreadsheets, eyes gleaming like a treasure hunter who'd found El Dorado. Money trail is beautiful. Worthington and Associates collected $127,000 in fraudulent management fees, plus $43,000 in fake violation fines. But here's the masterpiece. She's been paying herself consulting fees for compliance monitoring that exists nowhere in any legitimate legal structure. The room fell silent, except for Jennifer's wall clock ticking like a countdown to Brenda's doom and the distant sound of kids playing normal neighborhood music that Brenda had been drowning in bureaucratic terrorism. "What about her contractor scam?" Maria asked, anger sharpening her voice like a blade. "Worthington Landscape Solutions, Worthington Home Repairs, Worthington Seasonal Decorating," I read like announcing lottery numbers. "Same owner, same address, same criminal mastermind. She's been manufacturing violations to funnel work to herself." Rebecca actually laughed, the sound mixing with afternoon breeze through kitchen windows and my growing excitement. "RICO violations, mail fraud, wire fraud, organized criminal enterprise. This is looking at federal vacation time in orange jumpsuits. But we weren't just building criminal cases. We were planning community liberation that would end Brenda's dictatorship while protecting every family she'd robbed. Annual HOA meeting is Tuesday," Jennifer announced, consulting her calendar like a general planning D-Day. "She has to present financial reports under her own fake bylaws. Perfect." I grinned, feeling that electric anticipation when prey walks into perfectly set traps. We let her present fraudulent financials to the entire community with state investigators recording every lie. Mr. Kowalski, quietly organizing documents like a librarian of justice, looked up with treasure hunter eyes. "Original developer's bankruptcy attorney will testify that no legitimate HOA transfer occurred ever." Meanwhile, Rebecca added, cracking knuckles like a pianist preparing for Carnegie Hall, "I'm filing emergency injunctions, freezing all Worthington accounts. Can't let her shred evidence or flee to non-extradition countries." Dr. Kim's calculator had been working overtime, and his numbers made everyone lean forward. Full restitution plus punitive damages equals approximately $425,000 community recovery, plus criminal penalties putting her away for 5 to 10 years. The moral weight settled over us like evening shadows. We weren't just stopping neighborhood harassment, we were dismantling organized crime that had systematically robbed 47 families. Final nail in the coffin, I said, producing evidence that would make prosecutors weep with gratitude. Her board application financial disclosures. She concealed ownership of the management company, violating state ethics laws and making every action voidable. Rebecca clapped like she'd just witnessed a perfect execution. Conflict of interest, breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent concealment. This woman violated every law except gravity. As our strategy session concluded, satisfaction flowed through me like warm bourbon. 3 hours building an airtight case that would protect our community and end Brenda's criminal career with prejudice. "What happens to the HOA afterward?" Jennifer asked, gathering papers while sunset painted everything golden. "We rebuild it properly," I replied, imagining legitimate democracy replacing suburban fascism. Real elections, transparent finances, rules serving community instead of enriching sociopaths. Maria smiled for the first time in months, the expression transforming her face like sunrise after endless night. A neighborhood where people help instead of terrorize each other. "Exactly," I said, already planning the Willowbrook Community Safety Scholarship we'd fund with recovered criminal proceeds. Sometimes you demolish corruption before building something beautiful. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. Monday morning brought Brenda's victory lap, and she performed it with all the grace of a peacock on steroids. Her Facebook post appeared at exactly 7 a.m., timed perfect. TLI for maximum morning commute visibility. Finally, after months of battling entitled government employees who think badges make them special, justice prevails. Sheriff forced to comply with community standards, property values protected, #community first hash, known above the law. The post had already collected 43 likes and 16 comments from people who clearly enjoyed watching authority figures get their comeuppance. The smell of digital blood in the water was attracting sharks from neighboring subdivisions. But Brenda wasn't finished flexing her imaginary muscles. By noon, 6 more violation notices had appeared throughout the neighborhood like poisonous mushrooms after rain. The Pattersons got cited for excessive holiday lighting. Apparently, their modest Christmas display violated some buried seasonal decoration timeline. Maria Santos received a formal complaint about her mailbox numbers being incorrect font specification. Even gentle Dr. Kim found himself accused of unauthorized lawn modifications for planting roses without written approval. The woman was drunk on power and completely oblivious to the federal noose tightening around her neck. Tuesday brought the sabotage attempt, and it was so amateur it would have been funny if it wasn't criminal. I discovered the damage at 6 a.m. My patrol car's paint keyed in long, angry scratches that caught the morning light like scars. 2 tires slashed with what looked like box cutter precision. The radio antenna bent at an unnatural angle, and someone had apparently tried to break the rear window with a rock before giving up. The perpetrator had about as much stealth as a marching band. Mrs. Henderson next door had caught the whole thing on her security camera. 17-year-old Bradley Peton, son of our esteemed board member, skulking around my driveway at 2 a.m. like a discount ninja. Little bastard thought he was being clever, I muttered, watching the footage over coffee that tasted like vindication. The kid had even left a clear face shot when he looked directly at the camera, apparently unaware that most security systems record in night vision. My department's response was swift and professional. Bradley found himself in juvenile detention by 10 a.m., facing charges for vandalism of government property, criminal mischief, and destruction of emergency services equipment. His father's frantic calls to handle this quietly fell on deliberately deaf ears. Funny how quickly people discover respect for law enforcement when their own kids need legal mercy. Wednesday brought the political pressure campaign orchestrated with the precision of someone who'd clearly done this before. Chief Morrison called me into his office wearing the expression of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. The county commissioners had received multiple complaints about my ongoing harassment of concerned citizens and misuse of public resources for personal vendettas. "Marcus, I know this is bullshit," he said, his chair squeaking. Gee, like rusty hinges under political stress. But Commissioner Webb is facing re-election, and she's getting heat about police accountability from whoever's been calling her office. "Sir, I'm literally following department protocol while being systematically harassed by someone running a criminal enterprise. I understand that, but maybe consider taking leave until this resolves, just a few days to let temperatures cool." That's when I realized Brenda's strategy was working perfectly. She'd weaponized public perception, political pressure, and bureaucratic cowardice to isolate me professionally while building her case for complete neighborhood domination. Unfortunately for Brenda, she'd made one critical miscalculation. She thought she was playing political chess with a local sheriff who'd eventually cave to pressure. She had no idea she'd been committing federal crimes in front of someone with direct access to the FBI's white-collar crime unit. That afternoon brought the media blitz. Brenda's interview with Channel 7 News, scheduled during prime dinner hour viewing. She'd positioned herself as the brave citizen standing up to police corruption and government overreach in suburban America. "This sheriff thinks his badge makes him above community rules," she told reporter Madison Walsh, her voice quivering with practiced indignation. "He's intimidating families, threatening honest citizens, and using his position to avoid accountability. Where does it end?" The interview was a piece of manipulation, selective quotes, emotional appeals, and carefully edited footage that made me look like some kind of suburban dictator. By 7 p.m., the story was trending on local social media with hashtags like #badgeprivilege and #HOA Heroes. But while Brenda basked in her 15 minutes of fame, she had no idea that state investigators were currently obtaining warrants for her financial records, business communications, and every document related to Worthington and Associates. That night, tucking my daughters into bed while they asked why people were saying mean things about Daddy on TV, I felt the cold anger that makes good cops dangerous to bad people. "Don't worry, girls," I whispered, smoothing Emma's hair that smelled like strawberry shampoo and innocence. Sometimes liars get loud right before they get caught. Tomorrow would begin Brenda Worthington's very bad week. Thursday morning brought Brenda's nuclear option, delivered with the subtlety of a Category 5 hurricane hitting a trailer park. Emergency special assessment notice. The certified letters arrived like bureaucratic death sentences, each one demanding $2,000 per household within 48 hours. The stated purpose: legal defense fund for community protection against government harassment and intimidation. Translation: Brenda wanted every family to bankroll her war against me. The timing was surgical. 2 days before the annual meeting, just enough panic-inducing urgency to force compliance without giving time to research their options. The threat was beautifully crafted. Immediate foreclosure proceedings for non-payment, liens filed against property titles, and legal action that would protect our community from those who abuse their authority. By 10 a.m., my phone was ringing like a fire alarm. Elderly Mrs. Patterson, voice shaking with terror. "Sheriff, I can't afford $2,000. Will they really take my house?" Jennifer Reyes, fury crackling through cellular towers. "This psychotic has lost her goddamn mind." Even Dr. Kim, usually calm as surgical steel. "This feels like extortion." "Is this legal?" The beautiful answer: "Not even slightly." While neighbors panicked, I was conducting the most satisfying investigation of my career. State fraud investigators had obtained warrants for Worthington and Associates' financial records, and what they found made federal prosecutors cancel their weekend plans. Detective Sarah Wren from the Attorney General's office called with updates that sounded like Christmas morning. "Sheriff, this woman documented everything. Bank records showing kickbacks from contractors, emails discussing making examples of non-compliant homeowners, even spreadsheets tracking which families to target based on perceived vulnerability." How vulnerable are we talking? Elderly residents on fixed incomes, single mothers, families with recent job losses. She's been systematically targeting people least able to fight back. That afternoon brought Brenda's media circus, another Channel 7 interview where she played the victim with Oscar-worthy performance. Tears streaming down carefully made-up cheeks, voice trembling with righteous indignation. "This sheriff has weaponized his badge against innocent families. We're forced to defend ourselves against government corruption." The reporter, Madison Walsh, ate it up like candy. "What would you say to viewers who think this is just a neighborhood dispute? This is about American values." Brenda sobbed, dabbing her eyes with tissues that probably cost more than most people's lunch. When law enforcement thinks they're above the rules that govern everyone else, democracy dies. We're fighting for every homeowner in America. Pure theater, perfectly timed for maximum emotional impact. By evening, the story had spread to regional news networks, complete with hashtags like #StandUpToBadges and #Community Over Corruption. But while Brenda performed for cameras, she remained blissfully unaware that federal investigators were currently interviewing every contractor she'd recommended, every board member she'd influenced, and every neighbor she'd harassed. The evidence was mounting like snow in a blizzard. Friday brought the community crisis that would have broken a weaker neighborhood. Panic spread through Willowbrook like wildfire as families faced impossible choices: pay $2,000 they didn't have or risk losing homes they'd worked years to afford. Harold Clean, a 70-year-old veteran, knocked on my door at 7 a.m. with hands shaking like autumn leaves. "Sheriff, I'm living on Social Security. $2,000 is 3 months of my income. What am I supposed to do?" Maria Santos called in tears, her voice breaking with exhaustion. "I just finished paying off Emma's medical bills from her broken arm. I don't have $2,000. Will they really foreclose the cruelest part?" Brenda's assessment was specifically designed to target the most vulnerable families in our community. She'd studied financial disclosure forms, property tax records, and mortgage information to identify exactly who couldn't afford to fight back. It was predatory lending disguised as community governance. That evening, I made the call that would end Brenda's criminal career permanently. FBI White-Collar Crime Unit, Agent Thompson speaking. Agent Thompson, this is Sheriff Marcus Hendrick X. I need to report an organized racketeering enterprise operating under the guise of Homeowners Association governance. We're looking at mail fraud, wire fraud, extortion, and possible civil rights violations affecting 47 families. The silence on the line was pregnant with prosecutorial excitement. How much money are we talking about, Sheriff? Approximately $300,000 in fraudulent collections over 2 years, plus current extortion attempts totaling nearly $100,000 more. We're very interested.
Can you have evidence packages ready for review Monday morning?
By the time I hung up, Brenda Worthington had officially graduated from neighborhood nuisance to federal criminal. Target. The FBI would be joining our annual meeting Tuesday, though not as observers. They'd be there to arrest someone. Sunday night, I tucked my daughters into bed while they asked why some neighbors were crying and others were angry. Sometimes bad people hurt good people, I explained, breathing in their innocence, but good people always figure out how to stop them. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. Tuesday arrived with the kind of electric tension that makes thunderstorms jealous. Willowbrook Elementary's auditorium had never seen anything like it. 89 people crammed into a space designed for school plays, the air thick with anticipation and the lingering smell of cafeteria mystery meat. Every folding chair was occupied with latecomers standing along walls like spectators at a prize fight, which in a way they were. Brenda took the stage at exactly 7:00 p.m. wearing a navy blazer that screamed trustworthy authority figure and carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most neighbors' monthly groceries. Her smile could have powered the building's electrical grid. "Thank you all for coming during these challenging times," she began, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone who'd rehearsed this performance in mirrors. "Tonight we protect our community from those who think badges make them above the law." The presentation was pure propaganda artistry. PowerPoint slides showing fabricated budget shortfalls, manipulated property value statistics, and photographs of Burr. My patrol car shot from angles that made it look like military occupation equipment. Each slide built toward her crescendo, the emergency special assessment that would fund our legal defense against government corruption. $45,000 needed immediately, she announced, clicking to a slide showing foreclosure threats in bold red letters. $1,000 per household to protect our families from systematic intimidation. The crowd murmured like disturbed bees. I could smell the fear mixed with industrial carpet cleaner and fluorescent light ozone. That's when I stood up from the back row, feeling every eye in the room pivot toward me like searchlights. The silence was so complete, you could hear the building's ventilation system breathing. "Ma'am, I'd like to address the meeting," I said, my voice carrying the calm authority of someone who'd spent 15 years testifying in courtrooms. As both a homeowner and the county sheriff, Brenda's smile flickered like a dying light bulb. "Sheriff Hendrick X, this is an official HOA meeting for residents in good standing. Your ongoing violations." "Actually," I interrupted, walking slowly down the center aisle while pulling out a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse, "I think we need to discuss your authority to collect any fees whatsoever." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Ladies and gentlemen," I continued, reaching the front and turning to face the crowd, "I've discovered something that affects every family here. According to bankruptcy company documents filed in March 2019, this HOA has no legal authority to operate." The murmur rose to a roar. Brenda's face went whiter than fresh paint. The original developer went bankrupt without properly transferring HOA control to homeowners. For over 2 years, you've been paying fees to a private company with no more legal standing than a lemonade stand. That's completely false," Brenda stammered. her composed facade cracking like cheap makeup. "Those are technicalities. We've been protecting this community." From the back of the room, a new voice called out, "State investigators, we'd like everyone to remain seated." Two men in dark suits had appeared at the rear entrance, badges visible, expressions serious as cancer diagnosis. The crowd turned like synchronized swimmers, and the energy shifted from community meeting to crime scene. Brenda Worthington, the lead investigator, announced, his voice carrying across the auditorium with courtroom authority. "You're under arrest for organized fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering." The sound that followed was pure suburban shock. Gasps, chairs scraping, someone's phone clattering to the floor. Brenda stood frozen at the podium like a deer in headlights, her briefcase trembling in hands that had signed dozens of fraudulent violation notices. "You have the right to remain silent," the investigator continued, producing handcuffs that caught the fluorescent lighting like jewelry. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The perp walk was poetry in motion. Brenda, still wearing her trustworthy navy blazer, escorted through rows of neighbors she'd terrorized for months. Her designer heels clicked against linoleum with the rhythm of a funeral march. "This is harassment," she screamed as the handcuffs clicked into place. "Government conspiracy. I was protecting this community." The beautiful irony? She was transported in my sheriff's department vehicle, the same commercial eyesore she'd spent months trying to banish from the neighborhood. As the patrol car disappeared into the night, carrying Brenda toward federal booking, I turned to face my neighbors. 87 people who'd been systematically defrauded by someone who'd turned community governance into organized crime. "Folks," I said, my voice carrying across the auditorium that still buzzed with shock and vindication. "Sometimes the system works exactly as designed. Every family here is entitled to full restitution of all fees paid to this fraudulent operation." The applause started slowly, then built like approaching thunder. "This was never about parking," I continued, feeling the satisfaction of justice served properly. "This was about a criminal who thought she could hide behind a clipboard and terrorize honest families. Now let's rebuild this community the right way. Justice tastes sweeter than revenge, and revenge tastes pretty damn sweet." 6 months later, Brenda Worthington was trading her designer clogs for our orange prison slippers, serving 18 months federal time, plus 5 years probation. Her plea deal came after prosecutors showed her attorney 3 filing cabinets of evidence. Fighting federal racketeering charges with that much documentation was like bringing origami to a demolition derby. The financial recovery was spectacular. $425,000 returned to our community with interest and punitive damages. Every fraudulent fee, every fake fine, every illegal threat refunded with enough extra money to make our neighborhood richer than when this nightmare started. Worthington and Associates dissolved like sugar and acid rain, taking 12 other fraudulent HOA operations across 3 counties with it. Brenda's business model had infected subdivisions throughout the region, but our case became the domino that toppled her entire criminal empire. The real victory was watching our neighborhood transform from suburban prison camp into actual community. Our new HOA election drew 45% of 47 eligible voters. Democracy so overwhelming it made political scientists weep with joy. Jennifer Reyes became our first legitimate president, bringing hospital efficiency to community management. The Kowalskis revolutionized landscaping oversight, turning board meetings from trial proceedings into neighborhood coffee clatches where people solved problems instead of creating them. Most satisfying sight in America, my patrol car sitting proudly in my driveway, now recognized as the neighborhood's crown jewel. Crime dropped to 0. Property values soared thanks to positive media coverage, and insurance companies fought each other to offer discounts for our law enforcement partnership program. The Willowbrook Community Safety Scholarship became our legacy project. funded with recovered fraud money, awarding $5,000 annually to students pursuing criminal justice careers. Our first recipient, Maria Santos's daughter, whose application essay about learning that good people with badges protect neighborhoods from people with clipboards made grown cops cry. 12 months post Brenda, we hosted inaugural Willowbrook Unity Day, a block party that drew visitors from 6 surrounding subdivisions who'd heard about our HOA miracle. The smell of barbecue mixed with children's laughter, while adults marveled at legitimate community governance that actually served residents. Dr. Kim planted a community garden where Brenda's contractor shed used to rot. The Pattersons hung Christmas lights year-round because joy shouldn't be seasonal. Harold Klein's garden gnome army had grown to 47 pieces, one for each family Brenda had terrorized. My daughters, now 13 and brilliantly cynical, had learned lessons about justice and community that Harvard couldn't teach. Emma wanted to become a federal prosecutor to catch more suburban criminals, while Sophie planned on being sheriff like Daddy, but with better handcuffs. Professionally, this case launched a career renaissance featured in law enforcement journals, municipal reform conferences, and FBI training. Materials as the gold standard for HOA fraud investigation. I'd become the poster child for community policing that actually protects communities from their own governance. But personal satisfaction ran deeper than professional glory. Every morning, drinking coffee while my legally parked patrol car gleamed in the sunrise, I watched neighbors who helped instead of harassed each other. Mrs. Patterson brought soup during Harold's surgery recovery. Maria organized carpools that built friendships. Jennifer created emergency chilled air networks. Dr. Kim taught financial literacy workshops in his living room. Brenda had accidentally forged the strongest community bonds in subdivision history by giving us common enemy to defeat and shared victory to celebrate. The moral is beautifully simple. When good people unite, bullies get crushed. When communities demand accountability, criminals get federal prison sentences. When law enforcement serves justice instead of ego, everyone wins except sociopaths who deserve to lose. 2 years later, I still smile every morning seeing my patrol car legally parked where it belongs, knowing that sometimes the system works exactly as designed when good people refuse to be intimidated by clipboard-wielding terrorists. Because karma doesn't just have a badge, she has handcuffs, federal prosecutors, and really good aim. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment sharing your worst HOA horror story. Where are you watching from, Andy? How did you fight back against neighborhood tyranny? Smash that subscribe button for more justice stories here on HOA Stories, because we're building an army of people who refuse to let suburban dictators win. Remember, the best defense against HOA terrorism is community solidarity and someone who knows how to investigate financial crimes properly. Thank you for tuning in to HOA Stories, where neighbors stand up against HOA tyrants and karma comes a-knocking. If you like this story, hit that like button, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more HOA tales and real-life neighborhood drama each week.